Welcome to the Kick Sugar Coach podcast. Join me each week as I interview experts who will share the science of sugar, sugar addiction, and different approaches to recovery. We hope to empower you with the information and inspiration, insights, and strategies you need to break up with sugar and fall in love with healthy whole foods so you can prevent and reverse chronic disease, lose weight, boost your mood and energy. Feel free to go to my website for details on my coaching programs and to access free resources, kicksugarcoach.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. I have with me today Janette VanLeer, and she's been teaching others how to live their inspired life since 2011. She's an energy transformational coach, energy worker, and transformational coach, and she's the creator of the Transformation Code, which is a spiritually centered modality that helps people get to the root of the negative emotions and limiting beliefs that hold them hostage and hold them back from living an abundant and fulfilling life. This is something, the Transformation Code is something anybody can learn, and it's a really powerful tool that we can use, especially in our modern, fast-paced, highly anxious producing culture. Let me see what else. She has 4 grown children. She has a wonderful husband, and she has apparently 2 of the cutest grandchildren ever to be born on the planet. And you can find her at Transformation Energy Work, transformationenergywork.com. Welcome, Janette.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here with you.
So one of the pieces that I didn't include in her bio is that Janet's also a sugar-free woman. So for the last 2 years, she had one slip, but she has been a whole food woman for the last couple of years. And it's something that she's been noticing and playing with and sort of her relationship to sugar and food in general and comfort eating and that whole sort of women in food piece is something that she's been on a journey with for years. So Janette, tell us a little bit about how you've struggled with food and what inspired you to break up with sugar.
Well, it starts back to when my oldest was 6 years old. I didn't realize it was a little OCD, and I was putting his shoes on, and he was insisting that his socks, get his shoes on, and he said his socks were hurting his feet. So we'd take him out, and I would adjust and get the seam just right on his toes and, try to get his shoe back in. And I had PMS out the wazoo. I was grumpy and not as patient as I could have been, and I just lost it. And all of a sudden, this little 6-year-old stands up and puts his cute little hands on his hips, and he looks up at me and he says, "You look like Satan." And because I was just getting so mad at him and just did not have the patience to deal with his socks that morning. And I immediately had this flashback that if I don't figure this out, I just felt so raging inside a lot of the time that my kids were gonna, at my funeral, say that they had Satan for mother. And so I went on a journey and I started noticing what I ate and how I felt, and realizing that bowl of ice cream that I would eat when I put my kids down for a nap was affecting me actually 2 days later. And I did not want to get out of bed. I just, I really just did not want to do life, didn't want to be on the planet. And so I started working on limiting sugar and would do good for at times. And then there's times when life is lifing and you just don't care and you fall off the wagon. And when I got into energy work, I realized that if I ate foods and, sugar, especially, and bread, that I couldn't connect. I couldn't be intuitive. And, of course, that's how I make my living. And the thought of somebody coming to me for a reading and me going, "Sorry, I can't read you because I'm not connected because I had a bowl of ice cream or sugar or whatever," was just too hard. And so I got where I was able to do better and better and better. And then I have a friend that both of us, and she does energy work too, that we were just like, okay, we just got to be good. And I said, what if we made a bet? what if we made a bet that if we eat processed sugar, white sugar, that we have to pay each other $1? And she's like, you're on, let's do it.
A
And
dollar
that
or
was
$100?
$100.
$100, right.
And so that was 2 years ago, last Christmas. And I've only had to pay her one time. And that was the day my husband was in the hospital with pneumonia/COVID, almost died. And I came home when my daughter was making pumpkin cookies. And that day I'm like, I don't care. It's been a day. I ate this pumpkin cookie. And my friend still held my feet to the fire, and I got to pay her $100 that day.
Amazing. And how did she do?
You know, she also, the only time she's had to pay me is when she was eating something. We'd have a deal, like we can have maple sugar or honey or coconut palm sugar. You know, they're not like totally sugar free because you need some sweetness in your life. But I found those things don't affect me the way processed sugar does.
Okay.
And she was eating something that she didn't realize was against the deal that she made with me, and so she just paid up. So
Got it. That's very interesting. Okay, I assumed got it. So for me, when I think of sugar, I think of any refined carbohydrates, bread, pasta, juices, like anything where it was a whole food and then we tinkered with it and it's no longer a whole food and there's a concentrated kind of sweetness to it. So occasionally you'll do like honey or maple syrup.
okay. Yeah, or some coconut palm sugar.
Coconut palm sugar. Got it. Yeah. And how often do you find that you can tolerate that?
You know, I mean, I don't eat very much. It can just be, maybe a little bit in oatmeal, or, I mean, I don't eat tons, but sometimes you just need a little bit of sweetness in your life. And I eat a lot of fruit, and I'm a big fruit eater. So, I do have sweetness, but those are things that don't count on the bet. It's just white processed sugar that counts.
Yep. Got it for you. Got it. So with respect to how did you get into energy work?
The same child, when he grew up, he went into the Marine Corps and was on his first deployment at the age of 18 in Afghanistan, was gone 9 months and came home with major post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I was really concerned. Everything that the VA was doing for him was just making it worse. And I was really worried that he was going to be a statistic of suicide, of military suicide. And everything they were doing for him just was not helping. And so I started asking questions. And then I called up a niece she's actually 8 years older than me. And called her up and knew she'd been doing some things, and she kind of led me on the path. And then I found a school that taught massage with some energy work and started learning how to feel energy there, and it's just evolved from there.
Got it. And so because you were learning about how to work with energy and to be sensitive to it and to use it in healing, that's when you started to figure out what foods do and don't work for you, and that's where you could tell this white stuff no good.
Well, I started back when he was little and, told me I looked like Satan, but I just, until I had a big enough why that, I want to be a high vibrational, I want to be connected to source, I want to be able to be able to tune into another person's spirit and be able to tell, why they're stuck, and be able to help them get unstuck and progress and all of those things that, that why just got so big. And so I did pretty well, but there was just, that once in a while you're at a family function and somebody's made this wonderful dessert and you feel like you're going to let them down if you don't sample it, or people feel insecure around you because, they're eating sugar and you're not. And that always made me feel uncomfortable. And so the bet helped me get past those two things, that it's just like, nope, I'm committed. It doesn't matter if it makes somebody feel bad or, I can't control how they feel. I'm doing me. I'm committing to me and the type of vibration and life that I want to live. And then also at that time, I turned 55 this year. I started noticing the joints in my thumb were really bothering me and my feet were really hurting. And my mom had terrible arthritis, and just towards the end of her life, we couldn't take her anywhere because she could barely walk. And I knew that sugar is very inflammatory, and pastas and breads and all of those things. And so I also, for that reason, made the bet as well, because I want, doesn't, to me, quantity of life doesn't matter, it's quality. I don't
Totally.
care how old I am, but I want to be able to enjoy life and enjoy my family.
Right, right, right. Yes, absolutely. So talk to us a bit about the role that I know one of your areas of expertise is in working with limiting beliefs and negative emotions and how they can block us from having the life we want. And I'm assuming block us from having the relationship to food that we want. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, yes. So often I find when clients comfort eat and they've done good and then all of a sudden they just crash, it's because they're not feeling good enough. They've had something trigger that not feeling loved, not feeling good enough. And then we look for something that satisfies us, something that can fill us up when we're feeling empty inside. And so, our beliefs create our thoughts. And so if we're having beliefs that limit us, that aren't in alignment with truth, then they will create disempowering thoughts of I'm not enough, I suck, people don't love me. And then that creates emotions of low self-worth and sad, despair, disappointment, um, self-hatred, self-loathing, all of those kind of things. And then those cause us to just decide we don't care. Throw those things, we know it's not good for us. We just don't care. We just want to be filled up. We want to feel better. And when those negative emotions happen, it also suppresses dopamine, which is our pleasure, happy, feel good hormone. And whenever our dopamine is suppressed, we will look for whatever we can to get that functioning again. And that's where addiction happens. So, pornography is a big problem in our society. And I've found in working with people with that it's not that they're perverts, it's that they got their dopamine suppressed as a child, and then they see that first picture and the dopamine comes and it feels good and pleasurable, and they're hooked like that. And it's the same thing with sugar. We're just looking for that dopamine hit, that's something to make us feel good inside. And if we can learn how to produce dopamine in healthy ways versus unhealthy ways, because healthy ways that create dopamine last longer, they're more sustaining. When we eat sugar to get dopamine, 15 minutes later, we're craving it all over again. And pretty soon, we've eaten a whole humongous package of M&Ms or a whole pan of brownies, when we're just like starting off with, I'm just going to have a little bit.
Yes, that's amazing. That makes so much sense. And I know for me as a sugar addict who's been on again, off again, on again, off again with sugar, that one of the hardest things that I had to wrap my head around when pursuing healthy ways of lifting serotonin and dopamine and other feel good neurotransmitters is that we first have to go through the detox phase where we feel worse. We feel awful, right? And so our body remembers, no, I don't want to live without sugar, even though, I give you that we don't feel great right now. There's depression, aches, pains, headaches, whatever, diabetes, obesity. There could be all kinds of things that are side effects of sugar consumption, especially excessive sugar consumption. But oh my gosh, I don't want to have to go through what we go through when we get rid of it because we're so miserable. It's worse. And so, what would you say to that?
You know, It's a relationship. Food is a relationship. And any relationship we have is either codependent, independent, or interdependent. And many of us, when we comfort eat, it's because we're codependent on food to make us feel better, to fill up that space. And we overeat until we're just really full, trying to counteract for that emptiness that we feel inside. And when you can connect to love, because love is what we're really looking for when we comfort eat. And we are either at any moment in a place of fear or a place of love. There's really nowhere in between. All of our negative emotions and limiting beliefs happen when we're in fear. Fear suppresses dopamine. Love actually produces dopamine. Love is the highest sustaining way to get dopamine. And so when you can connect to the source of pure love, and that might be all it is, that might be universal source, that might be God, that might be Buddha, that might be whatever our belief system is. But I feel like whatever that is, for people, it might have a different label, but at the very core, it's where we can feel love. We can feel that, just that pure, that we don't have to do anything. We don't have to perform. We don't have to do anything right. I think of pure love is like air. We just get to breathe it in. It's all around us. It's accessible to us at all times. But we're not always willing and open and aware of how to get pure love and how to connect to pure love.
How do we connect to pure love, Janette? Hook us up.
Well, I was hoping you would ask. So I have an exercise that I take people through, and it's something that I do every morning, especially if I wake up. And typically I wake up with a little bit of fear. It's just, we're all natural, normal human beings. And there's three things. First of all, I will look at, okay, what am I afraid of? And I'll just bullet point and acknowledge that fear or that insecurity or that not enoughness is there. And believe it or not, whenever we're in fear, our bodies and our spirits separate a little bit. They're not fully connected. And when we're feeling disconnected, you just kind of feel like, where am I? Where did I go? I know when I was depressed, I just didn't feel like myself. And so there's something that we can do that actually connects our body and spirit. So I'm going to invite you to say the word cha, and then tell me in your body, like what gets activated in your body when you say that word.
Cha. Cha.
Where do you notice that you get to use, what do you become aware of when you say that word?
Cha. Well, there's so much happening simultaneously. A part of it is that I'm aware that I used my breath, like a deep breath. So I'm aware of my lower abdomen. There's almost like a feeling of cha, like that my solar plexus kind of, oh gosh, sorry, cha. There's like a feeling of a relaxation in the solar plexus area. I don't know if it's like the big breath and the release, but I'm aware of that.
I was at a conference when a woman on stage was talking about that, and she was talking about it as a way to calm anxiety. But while it is a way to calm anxiety, what I realized is when you're anxious, your body and spirit aren't connected. When your body and spirit aren't connected, you're not going to be connected to your truth. You're not going to be connected to love. You're going to be in a state of fear and anxiety. And your sacral chakra is our power center. It's our authority. It's where we live our truth from. And you'll notice when you say that you use every single muscle in your gut to say the word cha. So by saying that 10 times, it creates that awareness of our bodies, our awareness of our gut feeling, connects us to our spirit and who we are. And so then once that's connected, I'm just going to invite you to do this with me. So you're going to raise your arms to the heavens and just picture this bright white pillar of light coming from the source of all that is, or whatever your word for source is. And this light is full of your truth, your gifts, your talents, your plan, and your purpose. And you're going to connect to the great I am, because the great I am is love. And you're going to say, I am love 3 times. So go ahead and say that.
I am love. I
3 times.
am love. I am love.
Awesome. Now bring all that light and love. Just visualize that you bring it right down into your chest, into your heart, and say the truth of who you are, which is I'm love 3 times.
I'm love. I'm love. I'm love.
Wrap your arms around yourself and visualize spouses, children, friends, anyone that loves you, that's here in body, and also anyone who's passed on that might be an angel in your life that loves you, and say, I'm loved 3 times.
I'm loved. I'm loved. I'm loved.
And now spread your arms wide. I'm just going to take all this love and take it into your day with power. And when we start our day in power and in love, we're a lot less likely to give our power away to others. We are going to be open to receive that inspiration so that we can live our lives from a place of inspiration and not desperation. And when we're in our power, we might look at something that doesn't serve us, that is going to make us feel tired and sluggish and brain foggy and not feel good, and just go, you know what? It's not, 2 minutes of tasting that is going to create, a long time of feeling all of this and not feeling in my best self. It's just not worth it. It's easy to say no.
Right. And I remember years ago, thank you for that. That was actually really lovely, really beautiful. Yeah, I cannot, this is a minutia question. I'm super sensitive to fluorescent lights and bright lights. Can I visualize a golden light? Does it matter? Doesn't matter. It can be any color that just feels lovely. And
Pink, it could be green.
purple. Okay, purple it is. That's my favorite color. Okay, thank you for that. Just in case anyone listening is this in the same boat. So I remember years ago, I was a raw fooder. I was on my raw food kick back then. And I remember seeing images using a Russian camera. It was called the Kalurian camera. And what it does is it could actually photograph some of the electrical current off of food. And they could show an image of something that had been processed versus something that was fresh and fresh from the garden, something organic versus non-organic, which was very interesting. Anyways, and the ones that were organic and fresh from the garden, right, were whole intact foods. There was like electrical storms, like all over it, and something that was processed had very little electrical current. And the whole thing is that the food that we eat brings in energy. It isn't just phytonutrients. It's not just vitamins and minerals and whatever, and protein and fat and carbohydrates, but that there's literally life force energy in it that can impart energy into our bodies. And the whole thing is that when we're at a certain vibration and we're eating foods that are above or below, it feels out of sync, like we can't do it. So when we're in a really low vibrational depression, anxiety, a tired, fatigue, all those sort of negative thoughts going through our heads, that we're going to pull for foods that are also low vibrational because they're a match.
Mm-hmm.
And that as we raise our vibration, that these foods no longer are a match. They just feel more jarring and unpleasant, and we're more aware of how it's pulling us down and holding us back. And you totally strike me as that's your experience.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I, when I choose food most of the time, I'm by any means, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect, but it's how is that going to make me feel? How is that going to affect me? Is that going to give me energy and vitality and connection? Or is it going to cause me to feel sluggish and disconnected and brain foggy?
Right, which gives you more of the bad feelings that require you to go more towards these drug-like foods, right? Like it's just this vicious cycle. And let's talk about that exercise was beautiful. Is there things you could say about how we can work with limiting beliefs? Because I was very struck by the fact that you said beliefs lead to thoughts. I don't think I've heard that before. Could you say more about that?
Yeah. Just real quick, as saying an affirmation that also has helped me is nothing tastes as good as feeling good feels. And that's something I put on my fridge from time to time, when I struggled more. So limiting beliefs um, are, we have a reticulating activating system. I don't think I said that word exactly right. It's called the RAS system. And its job is to keep us safe. And many times we will have experiences in our life that will create a belief that something isn't safe or something won't feel good or that will hurt or if I do that I'll get rejected, things like that. And so when that gets triggered, there's heavy energy that gets trapped in our bodies, and that will stop us, that will keep us from progressing in our lives. It's like hitting that belief. And we also have generational beliefs. And depression for me started generationally, 7 generations back. And then my mom was actually 48 years old when I was conceived. She had fibromyalgia. I think she would have been diagnosed with either fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue. It was almost 55 years ago. And very depressed and really couldn't take care of me the first years of my life. And so I was passed around and kind of a burden to people. People in my church would take care of me during the day. And then when my sisters got home from school, my oldest sister was a senior at the time. She couldn't do all of her activities as a senior. She had to go pick me up from the babysitter and take me home and watch me. She was like my mom. And so anytime I felt like I was going to be a burden, I would go above and beyond for people. I would, I would be very independent in my relationships. I never asked for help. I never let people in. I just tried to do everything myself. It was very lonely because I didn't want to be a burden and put anybody out, because even though I was a baby and I didn't remember that, that's something that I was told. That feeling there was so strong and so traumatic that if I ever felt like I was a burden, it just was like, it was devastating to me.
Yes,
And
totally.
so realizing that and getting that heavy energy released has actually helped me have healthier relationships, because the infinity cycle is how our energy flows, and it's a give and a receive. And if we want our lives to be in flow, we need to learn how to give and how to receive. And we want, ideally, the relationships in our lives to give and receive. Give support, receive support. And when you're just independent and you don't trust that anybody will be there to support you, I also have realized that there's been some abuse that I didn't realize from my father. And so there's that feeling used. Energy there as well that kept me just, I got to be independent. I got to take care of myself. Nobody's going to be there for me. And that has changed my relationship with my husband. getting rid of that. It has enriched my marriage. I couldn't connect with my kids because I didn't ever connect with my mom. So I didn't know how to connect in a nurturing way with my kids. Now my kids are in their 20s and 30s. I'm finally able to really connect with them, nurture them, and love them the way they deserve to be loved. Um, I'm able to, in my business, delegate things, hire a VA, and trust that she'll be there to support me to do the things that doesn't make sense for me to do. So, in all areas of my life, just working on that one limiting belief has opened up my relationships in all areas.
Wow. I am gobsmacked. Wow. What a journey of recovery you've been on. That's an incredibly that's incredible early childhood
Just
trauma.
other my many limiting beliefs. You know, we all have a lot, and
Yes.
I don't know that we ever get through them, but that's how the transformation code came to be. Is it easily lasers into what those limiting beliefs are, and then and it's something like salt. I can't explain to you how salt tastes. You just have to experience it, and then you don't want life without it. And once you can experience what having the limiting belief identified and the pull and the just the fear that it brings up, and then hearing the perfect truth, the perfect universal truth that align with the universal laws that put life in motion and flow, and being it automatically shifts you out of that so you can let go of the heavy energy and then align with truth. And then if it's a habitual thought, you will still have that thought, but you'll recognize it. Oh, there's that pesky thought, and I know it's not true, and this is my truth. So you're not giving your power away to those limiting beliefs, even though they might still come up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 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 yes. So just to like, I know one of my chronic limiting beliefs is I'm not safe. I'm not safe. I don't have any rational reason to be saying that. I live in a quiet neighborhood, in a lovely home, in a peaceful country. I have loving relationships around me. There's no reason for that to be in my adult life a limiting belief, but it is there. And I imagine it's multi-generational. My father came out of the war. He was a Dutch, he lived on the border of Germany. My grandfather went through not one, but two wars, right? Like I can imagine some of that got passed down, maybe. So where would it begin to start to shift that I am safe? I'm not where I feel where I want to feel is I am safe, but what I do feel is I'm not safe.
Um, I like to look at things as a pie. Is it all right if I just tune into you for a second?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Um, so I can tell, and I use muscle testing as well. If we look at this as a pie, 20% of this pie is generational on your father's side. It does go back 4 generations. Um, and then there's just this feeling that I'm going to, I can tell you're a very sensitive, you talked about being sensitive to light. And I can just tell you're a very sensitive to your environment. And so even like if you were ever had siblings that were fighting, or parents that might not have been getting along, um, you would be very sensitive to words. And so if someone was trying to correct you and thinking they're doing it in a loving way, but maybe it's not feeling very loving to you and it hurts, that wouldn't feel safe. And so it honestly feels like it's more worried about judgment, criticism, those kinds of things versus somebody's going to physically hurt me. Is
Mm.
that, am I on there?
Yeah, I would say that's true. And I also think there's a bit of that unsafety around feeling like insecure, like but not just emotionally insecure that I might not be enough, good enough, but more like let me just see it, just let me get in touch with it. More around interesting around finances. Am I going to be okay? Will I be okay in retirement? Am I going to be okay? Right? That more of that feeling. You're right. It's less fear that something violent or physical is going to come and attack me. More about this feeling of I'm not going to be taken care of.
That feels 100% generational, that piece.
Okay.
The war, you talk about people only having a potato and dividing that up between a family, and that's all they had to eat.
Yeah.
Um, so very much 100% generational. And so your energy practitioners will say, okay, I'm going to clear this from you now. And I'll be honest, that's a real pet peeve of mine because I don't have any control over you and your energy, nor do I ever want to. But you have the personal power just to decide to let it go. And so in this moment, you can just put your hands on your heart and ask your body, mind, and spirit to let go of this generational belief that any moment you're not going to have enough money to provide for your needs. And just ask to let that go out of every cell in your body.
That's simple.
Yeah, I'll walk you through it. Put your hand on your heart.
Okay. 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 Sorry, buddy. I'm doing therapy today in this call, this podcast. Thank you, though.
We're going to ask your mind, your body, and your spirit to release and let go of this generational belief on your father's side that you are not going to be safe. You're not going to have enough out of every cell, organ, tissue, chakra, light, body, gland, and meridian now. And just take a big breath in. And as you let it go, smile as big as you can because you can't smile without producing dopamine and serotonin, and that produces higher vibrational emotions. It also feels like, so that cleared 70%, there's 30%. It also feels like I'm hearing in my mind, I don't have two pennies to rub together. So I'm wondering if your family, at some point, your mom or your mom and dad didn't like they had two pennies to rub together, and you being so empathic would have taken that energy on. And so then you can just also feel like it was started at 3 years old. And we won't do that now, but you can go through and do the very same thing and ask that to be released from age 3.
Wow. Very cool. Yes, I certainly did. My parents divorced. And when my parents divorced, my mother came back to Canada. My dad was living on a boat, and we lived in our cabin, and it was tight. Like it was white bread and margarine sandwiches. It was very basics. And my mom got on her feet, but there was a stretch there where I really deeply was worried about her money. I felt her pressure. I felt her, oh my God, I have 3 kids and a high school diploma, and how the hell am I going to feed these kids? And I mean, she did. She figured it out and really did well for herself. But yeah, there was a very intense time where I felt it all the time, her fear.
So just asking your body, mind, and spirit to let go of any of your mom's stuff from that point in time that you took on is also something that you could do.
Okay. Wow. Ask and receive. I mean, that's that's awesome. Is there anything else you want to add about the topic of women, sugar, trauma, recovery, comfort eating, moving into a life of abundance and peace and joy?
Yes, yes. We are either so many, especially since the pandemic and everything, are just surviving, are just getting by, and are living in a place of fear. And that blocks us from receiving inspiration, from living that inspired life. I fully believe that each of us have a purpose here. We have a reason for being on this planet. We have an impact, whether it's just our family or whether it's a wider audience. And you never make good decisions from desperation. While living from inspiration, those decisions don't always make sense. It made no sense for me at the age of 42, when I had no idea that I even had any spiritual gifts, to go into debt $12,000 to go to this school. But I just felt a pull. I just knew I went there and I just started crying the minute I was talking to the person that would enroll me and finding out about it. And so I moved forward. And that has been life changing for me. And living from inspiration is really, if I had a big, hairy, crazy goal, it would be that everybody on the planet could learn how to live their inspired life and learn how, when they're in desperation, to get out of desperation so that they can feel their inspiration, feel their guides, feel their angels, and allow them to help them and be interdependent with them. And that would raise the whole vibration of our planet. And our planet would move from a third vibrational feeling of fear to a higher fifth dimensional plane of love. And to me, that's heaven on earth.
Wow. And what an amazing life you must live, knowing that I want to be a part of that transformation on the planet, that people move into love and away from fear and into those higher vibrations where we can hear the inspiration and we can give our gifts, bring our gifts. I wanted to end by a couple of things I wanted to summarize, that we were talking a little bit about how whole foods have higher vibrations, and they if we're at a low vibration, if we're depressed, we're fatigued, we're anxious, right? Bringing in the healthy whole foods will feel awkward, wrong. I don't want to eat a salad. I want to go eat whatever, pizza, right? But if you do bring in the salad, right? It's higher vibrational than maybe you're feeling, but it can help lift you up. It can help raise that vibration of the body. And it's a hack. It's a cheat. It's a shortcut to helping you raise the vibration of your system so that you can start to live a more inspired life. And then all the stuff that Janet's talked about today about working with limiting beliefs that are heavy and negative and multi-generational often, that lower our dopamine, that make us feel empty, and how by embracing love and finding a path to connecting to source, reconnecting our body and spirit, brings in a kind of dopamine that's sustainable. The ultimate feel good experience, way better than even Black Forest cake, which is hard to believe. But I believe that was the message that Janet shared with us today, that there is
Just one more tip.
Yeah.
Something, and I'm not always able to do this, but when we're wanting to eat the Black Forest cake, if you can tell yourself, I can have that Black Forest cake, but first I get to journal for 15 minutes. If you'll just sit down and write down your emotions, vomit your emotions out on that page for 15 minutes, 5 minutes, and then just be quiet and ask yourself, is all of that true? And what would my best friend tell me? What would source tell me? What would someone that, sees you, like, a grandma, somebody that just loves you, what would they tell you about that? And then write that down. It will, even if you still want to have the Black Forest cake, I promise you, instead of wanting to eat the whole cake and not being able to stop yourself because you're so empty and sad and low, you can just have that one sliver of a slice and be satisfied. It can be enough. And because you've identified the issue and you've filled yourself with some love.
And some truth. You've connected to.
So you're not going to be as empty and you're not going to be as needy to just, get all your dopamine from Black Forest cake.
Yes, got it. And for those of us that are on the addiction spectrum, which is many of us listening to my podcast, no, probably not. We probably cannot do a slice of Black Forest cake, even if maybe run the experiment. But I know that my dragon and my sugar dragon saying, we could do this. And I'm like, no, honey, just we can't do that. We ran that experiment. That just doesn't work anymore. That will never work for me. But I don't need it. I don't even call for it. I don't even want it. You couldn't pay me. But just to wrap this all up, just to wrap this all up, there is a life after sugar that is better than we can imagine, and that the journey there is really just a reconnection process. It sounds like I'm kind of summarizing Janet here, reconnection process of disconnecting from the relationship that we have with sugar that brings us these temporary short bursts of dopamine, and reconnecting to ourselves and to source that allows us to have a very sustained experience of feeling good. And that it all begins with working with those negative thoughts and just write them down and then reframe them. It's kind of like a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. What is the truth? I am safe. I am loved. I am enough. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for your time today, Janet. Really appreciate it. It was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in this week. If you would like more interviews, more information, and more inspiration on how to break up with sugar, go to my YouTube channel, Kick Sugar Coach, or my website, kicksugarcoach.com. See you next week.